Hello students, welcome to Epitome IAS. So as a part of Ncert series, so far we have finished up to 9th class, right? So in last chapter we have seen the second chapter actually, and in that second chapter we have seen the part 1 of second chapter. And if you recollect, or if you are able to recollect the topics which were discussed in last chapter, we were mainly focusing on these particular Himalayan mountains, right? So why we are studying Himalayan mountains? The point is very simple. So in this chapter we are going to see all the physical features that are present in India. So as a part of those physical features, we already noticed that we are having 6 important physical geographical features that are located in India. So out of those 6 geographical features, first one is Himalayan mountains, right? Second one would be the northern plains of India, and third one is peninsular plateaus, and the fourth one is Indian desert, fifth one is coastal plains, and sixth one would be the islands, right? So these are the list of physiographical features that are naturally situated or naturally present in India. Now, in last class, as I told you earlier, in part 1 we already discussed regarding the Himalayan mountains and the types of ranges that Himalayan mountains are having, vertically and horizontally, right? We all discussed in previous classes, right? Now in this class we are going to see the second important physical feature, that is northern plains. Now the point here is, if you go back to the previous classes, right, if you go back to 6th class, 7th class, 8th class, somewhere we have read regarding these plains. Now how does these plains are formed? How does these plains are formed? This is the question here, right? So the plains are formed because of depositional activities. Depositional activities of what? Depositional activities of rivers. Now what is meant by depositional activity, sir? So that is the point here, right? If you see here, if you are talking regarding the northern Indian plains, that means the plains which are present in the northern part of India. Mostly these plains are formed by the depositional activities of 3 main important rivers. Are you getting my point? Now what is meant by depositional activity? Depositional activity is nothing but the rivers would be bringing certain sediments, right? So if you see, we all know that northern rivers, right, the rivers which are present in northern India, majority of them are starting from Himalayan mountains. Now when they are starting from Himalayan mountains, in the early stage or in the first stage, what happens? These rivers would be eroding all the rock materials that are present in that particular Himalayan mountains, right? So what happens then? Then all those eroded or all those sediments would be coming along with this particular river stream. Now once they reaches to the foothills of Himalayas, there what happens? There the slope would be very, very less, or else we can tell that the slope would be very gentle, right? So what happens when the slope is gentle, or what happens when the gradient is very less? Obviously all the sediments will get accumulated at a certain place, right? So because of that, we have seen in previous classes that alluvial fans are formed near the foothills of Himalayas, right? Not only Himalayas, if you take any mountain, or not only Himalayas, if you take any mountain where we are having this particular origin of rivers, at the foothills of those mountains or those hills, we will be seeing the formation of alluvial fans. Alluvial fan is nothing but a deposition of all the sediments which were brought by that particular river stream, right? So if you go to northern part of India, since we are talking regarding the northern plains, these northern plains are mainly formed because of these 3 rivers, right? What are those 3 rivers? The first river is Ganga river, second river is Indus, and third river is Brahmaputra river. Right, because of these 3 rivers, we can see the formation of this feature called as, or the landform called as plains, right? So now the point is, if you see these particular plains which are formed by these three rivers, these plains are very rich in alluvial. Right, what is meant by alluvial? Alluvial is nothing but the fine sediments which were brought by these particular rivers. Right. So this particular region where we are seeing the formation of these plains are very rich in alluvial soils. So what happens if a land is having alluvial soil? Obviously, this alluvial quantity or alluvial quantity would be helping for more agricultural fertility. Right. So that is why these particular plains are very rich in agricultural activities. Right. So this thing we already seen in previous classes. Now, if you come back to this particular chapter, if you see the content which was given under these particular northern plains, you will be noticing that, right, if you see the content which was given in this particular Ncert, he is saying that these northern plains, they are formed because of the Indus river, Ganga river and Brahmaputra river. Right, not only these three rivers, right, even the tributaries of these three rivers, they are contributing for the formation of these particular northern plains. As I told you earlier, these plains are very rich in alluvial soil, and the point here is the deposition of alluvium in the vast basin lying at the foothills of Himalayas over millions of years formed these fertile plain. So what does it mean? It means that if you see any plain, or in that matter if you see any landform, not only plain, right, if you see mountains or if you see the plateaus, any landform, right, in order to form will be taking a very huge amount of time. Right, it takes very huge amount of time. Right, in one day or in 2 days, no, these landforms won't form. Are you getting my point? So in order to form or in order to get a ultimate feature of these particular landforms, it takes huge amount of years, huge amount of time is needed. So in this case, right, in this particular northern plains case, what happened? The deposits of these particular three rivers, right, they started accumulating over a period of time, and these plains are formed over a large amount of time. Right. Now, if you see the area, if you see the entire area of this north Indian plains, it was spread across 7 lakh square kilometers. Are you getting my point? Now, if you see the length of this plain, right, if you see the length of this plain from west to east, the length would be 2400 kilometers. And now what about the width? The point here is the width of northern plains is not equal, right. It would be varying from 240 kilometers to 320 kilometers, right. That is the broadness or that is the width of these particular North Indian plain. And if you see these plains, generally plains are the most densely populated areas. Why? Because in plains it is very easy to make transportation, and it is very easy to construct any sort of industry, and moreover the economical activity would be very high because of high fertile lands. Are you getting my point? And for industries, what we need? We need water, right? Since these plains are formed because of the rivers, obviously those areas would be having a high abundance of water. So because of that particular reason, where economical activity is very high, obviously what happens? People will start coming there, people will start living in that particular area. So because of that reason, we come to a conclusion that plains are very densely populated areas, not only in India, right. If you take the entire world, wherever there is a plain, obviously the population density would be very high when compared to other features, other land features, right. Now here, if you now with a rich soil cover combined with adequate water supply and favorable climate, it is agriculturally a productive part of India, right. That is what I told you. Since we are having high abundance of water and since we are having high fertile soil, right? So this particular place or this particular area is very, very, very productive. Now, the rivers coming from northern mountains are involved in a depositional work. What is my depositional work? This is a key term here, right? So the point here is, as I told you in the introduction class or in the introduction slide, that these plains are formed because of the deposition of the sediments which were brought by these particular rivers, right? Again he was reiterating that particular statement. He is saying that these plains are formed because of which type of activity? They are formed because of a depositional activity of the particular river. Now, in the lower course, due to gentle slope, the velocity of river decreases, which results in formation of riverine islands, right? So this is also an important point here. So whenever there is a river which is starting from its source, and when it is going and when it is mixing with the sea, what happens? It would be following certain stages, right? In stage 1, what happens? The velocity of the water would be very high. Why? Because of that origination point. What is meant by origination point? Obviously, when river is starting from any mountain, what happens? The slope would be very high, the gradient would be very high, right? So because of that, obviously water would be flowing with a high velocity. So whenever this river is reaching into the plain areas, right, then what happens? Obviously plain areas is having a important feature, that is the particular gradient would be very, very low, or else we can say that there would be very gentle slope. So because of that reason, what happens? The velocity of river would be very, very low, right? So because of that less velocity of that particular river, all the depositional activities will happen, and because of that depositional activities at certain places you will be seeing the formation of islands, right? Now if you go to Vijayawada, you will be having Bhavani Island, right? How does that particular Bhavani Island has formed? Because of the depositional activity which was happening for a long period of time in Krishna river, right? So that particular Bhavani Island has been formed. Are you getting my point? In that way, you can see many riverine islands are forming because of these particular less velocity of the river, and that less velocity of the river is because of the less or the gentle gradient or the gentle slope of that particular landform which was present there. Now, here he has given example of one of the riverine island, that is Majuli Island. Now, where is this Majuli Island? On which river this Majuli Island has been formed? It was formed in Brahmaputra river. Now, what is the importance of this particular Majuli Island? It is the largest inhabited riverine island in the world. Not only India, in the entire world, this particular Majuli Island is the largest inhabitant riverine island. What is meant by inhabited riverine island? That means the density of the population is very, very high in that particular island when compared with the other islands. Now, the rivers in their lower course split into numerous channels due to the deposition of silt. These channels are known as distributaries. This is also an important keyword. What is that? Distributary. Now, what is the difference between a distributary and tributary? Tributaries are those river flows which comes and joins to a main river. Are you getting my point? Now, what is meant by distributary? Distributary is that kind of river or that kind of water flow which would be deviating or which would be separating from the main river, right? So that is the basic difference between distributaries and tributaries, right? In earlier case, we have seen that these northern plains are formed because of what? Because of Indus river, because of Ganga river, because of Brahmaputra river, and because of their tributaries. But in case of this particular thing, here he is saying that these particular rivers, when they are lowering their particular speed, and how does that velocity or speed of a river would reduce? Because of the less slope, then what happens? Because of the less velocity, all the sediments will get deposited at certain places, right. So, because of that particular thing, we can see the formation of small channels called as distributaries, right. Now, if you see these particular northern plains, right, if you remember in previous class, we studied regarding these Himalayan mountains, right. So, we have divided Himalayan mountains into certain parts or certain sections depend upon their longitudinal extent and latitudinal extent. In the same way, if you see this particular northern plains, again we can divide these northern plains into 3 sections. What are these 3 sections? What are these 3 sections? The first section is the western part of these particular northern plains, right. So, what is the name which we are giving to this westernmost part of the northern plains? The name is Punjab plains. Why we are giving the name as Punjab plains? Because this westernmost part of northern plains, right, they are present in Punjab region, right. And if you see these western plains, majority of these western plains are right now present in Pakistan. And if you see these western plains, they are formed by which rivers? They are formed by Indus river and their tributaries. Now, what are the tributaries of Indus river? Obviously, we all know that Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Satluj are the tributaries of these particular Indus river. Now, the point here is, because of these tributaries and the main river Indus river, we can see formation of the plains in Punjab region as well as in Pakistan region, right. So, that is why we are naming that portion or that portion of plain as Punjab plains. Now, here you have to understand one more thing, that is Doab. What is meant by the term Doab? Doab is nothing but it is the name of the plain, right, which was present in that particular Punjab region. The plains in Punjab regions are called as Doab. Now, what is meant by Doab? Doab is nothing but, if you see, if you break that particular word called Doab, you will be seeing Do plus Ab. Do is nothing but river, Ab means, sorry, ఇది కొద్దిగా కట్ చేసుకో చూసుకోది. Do is nothing but to, Ab is nothing but water, running water. That means the area which is formed because of 2 running waters, that means 2 rivers. So, that particular zone they are calling it as an Doab, right. Doab is nothing but a plain, right. So, now we will be seeing the second section or the second part of these northern plains. So, in that we have to understand that the second section is called as Ganga plains. Why we are calling it as an Ganga plains? Obviously, the name itself says that that particular plain is formed because of Ganga river or its tributaries, right. Now, if you see the states in which this particular Ganga plain has been flowing, the states would be Haryana, Delhi, UP, Bihar and partly in Jharkhand as well as in West Bengal. That means this particular Ganga plain would be passing, or this particular Ganga plain has spread across Haryana, Delhi, UP, Bihar and Jharkhand as well as West Bengal. In these in these 6 states, you can see the spreading of this particular Ganga river. Now, if you go to the eastern section, or if you see the easternmost part of this Ganga plain, this particular part of Ganga plain is called as Brahmaputra plain. Why? Because this particular plain is formed because of Brahmaputra river and its tributaries, and majoritarily you can see this particular plain in Assam region, right. So, these are the divisions, or these are the categories, 3 categories of these particular Ganga plains from west to the east. Now what he has given here, he is saying that the northern plains are generally described as flat land with no variation in its relief. So, what does it mean? It means that if you see these plains, generally what is the notion that we are having? Plain is nothing but a flat land, right. There won't be any variation in the altitude. Are you getting my point? So, that is the notion. Generally we consider plains as the flat lands without any relief or without any variations in their relief structure. So generally we expect that these plains are the flat areas without any variation in their relief structure, but this is not true in case of these particular northern plains. Why? We will be seeing that. These vast plains also have diverse relief features. According to variations in relief feature, the northern plain can be divided into 4 important regions. Guys, this is very important concept here, right? So there are n number of questions in a different years in UPSC prelims, right? So these particular chapter or this particular paragraph is very important for our UPSC prelims, right? So there are many questions which were repeatedly asked in different years regarding these 4 regions of these particular northern plains, right? Now we will be seeing that. The rivers, after descending from the mountains, deposit pebbles in a narrow belt about 8 to 16 kilometers width, lying parallel to the slopes of Shivaliks. Now the point here is, whenever the river is coming from these particular Himalayan mountains, right, after traveling the huge distance with very high velocity, what happens? It would be reaching to the foothills of Himalayas. So whenever the river is reaching to the foothills of Himalayas, obviously what would be the first thing happening to that river? The velocity of that river would be reduced, right? Or else you can see the deposition of the sediments which were brought by that particular river stream. Are you getting my point? Then what happens? Then all the deposits will be happening, all the sediments will get deposited. So because of that deposition activity which is happening near the foothills of Shivaliks, right, we can see a new relief, or you can see formation of these particular narrow belt called as an bhabar, right. So if you see the width of this particular belt, it would be up to 8 to 16 kilometers. Are you getting my point? So suddenly when the river is coming and joining these particular foothills, there you can see the depositional activity would be happening, right. Because of that depositional activity, you can see the formation of a new feature called as an bhabar, right. Now all the streams disappear in this bhabar belt. Obviously, why does all the streams disappear? First thing is the velocity of that river has been reduced. The second thing is all the deposits, right, which were bought by the river has been deposited at that particular zone, at that particular area. So because of that particular thing, you can see the disappearance of many streams. Now if you move to the southern side of this particular belt, that is Bhabar, there is one more belt that has been formed. So what is that? South of this belt, the streams and rivers re-emerge and create a wet, swampy and marshy region. This is also an important point here, right. To the southern side of these Shivaliks, we have seen the formation of Bhabar. Bhabar is a narrow belt, right, narrow zone where you can see all the deposition activity is happening, right. The width would be up to 8 kilometers to 16 kilometers. It might vary at different points. It might vary at different places, right. Now the point here is, to the southern side of this Bhabar, you will be having another feature, right. If you see this particular feature, that is called as an terrain. Now what is the characteristic of terrain? These terrain, or in this terrain zone, you will be seeing the re-emergence of all those streams which were disappeared in Bhabar. And if you see the important characteristic, terrain is mostly the wet land, and it will be having some marshy region, it would be having some swampy things, right. So wettiness, swampy and marshy, these three are the important characteristics of this particular terrain zone, right. And because of this particular thing, you will be seeing a high amount of vegetation which would be grown in that particular region, right. So that was given here. This was a thickly forested region full of wildlife, right. If you go to northern parts, if you go to Kaziranga National Park, or if you see majority of the national parks are formed in this particular zone, terai zone of the northern plains. Why? Because there you would be having the important features that are important for the growth of vegetation and the survival of wildlife. Are you getting my point? Now, the forests have been cleared to create agricultural land and to settle migrants from Pakistan after partition. Right, that was given here. Here he is saying that the forest which was present in this particular terai zone has been removed. Why? Because people who have migrated from Pakistan during partition, they started coming there and they started living there. Right. So, one of the national park is Dudhwa National Park. Even this Dudhwa National Park is located in the terai zone of this particular plains. Right. Now, the largest part of northern plain is formed of older alluvium. This is also an important thing. Right. In statement based questions, there is a probability. So, he might be twisting older alluvium with newer alluvium. Now, the point is these northern plains are formed because of, or these northern plains would be having a high amount of older alluvium deposits. It lies above the floodplains of rivers and presents a terrace-like feature. So, this particular terrace-like feature is called as an bhangar. Are you getting my point? So, you would have seen in previous year questions that the older alluvium soils are called as bhangar. Are you getting my point? Can you remember that? If you are solving the PYQs, you might be seeing this particular statement in that particular question. Right. Now, the point here is we understood that majority of these northern plains are having older alluvium deposits, and these older alluvium deposits are called as bhangar deposits. Right. And if you see these particular older alluvium deposits, where these older alluvium deposits are seen, they are seen above the floodplains of those particular rivers. Right. What is the floodplain? Floodplain is nothing but the area, right, which was covered or which was formed because of overflow of any river. Right. Overflow of any river is called as flood. So, the plain which is formed because of the floods which are created in a river. Right. So, these older alluvium soils are formed above these flood plains. Now, the soil in this region contains calcareous deposits locally known as kankar. Now, if you see this bhangar, we have to understand that bhangar is an older alluvium deposit, and this bhangar or in these older alluvium deposits you would be seeing many kankars. What is meant by kankar? Kankar is nothing but calcareous deposit. That means the deposits which are somewhat heavier, right, which looks like small stones, small pebbles. Right. Now, the newer younger deposits of floodplains are called as khadar. Now, the point here is the fourth feature or the fourth section, it is called as khadar. Now, what is meant by khadar? Khadar is nothing but those kind of deposits or those alluvial deposits which are newly formed or which are younger when compared to the other alluvial deposits. Right. In shorter terms or in simple terms, we have to understand that khadar is nothing but the area which contains the younger alluvial deposits. Right. They are renewed almost every year and so are fertile, thus ideal for intensive agriculture. What does it mean? It means that this particular khadar zone or khadar region is continuously filled with newer alluvial deposits or younger alluvial deposits. Right. So, because of that particular reason, we can say that this zone is very, very high intensive agricultural zone. Right. So, these are the four divisions. Now, let us revise these particular four divisions of the northern plains. Right. Now, if you try to revise or recollect these four divisions, near the foothills of Shivaliks, we can see the formation of Bhabar. Right. So, what is the specialty or what is the important feature of this Bhabar? In this Bhabar zone, you can see the depositional activity which is happening. Right. And you will be seeing the velocity of river would be decreased and the width of this Bhabar zone would be from 8 kilometers to 16 kilometers depending upon that particular zone. Now, to the southern side of Bhabur, we have Terai zone, right. So, if you see this Terai zone, in this Terai zone, you will be seeing the large vegetational activity, and you will be seeing a thickly, growed forests, and you will be seeing the high amount of wildlife in that particular zone. So, that is why majority of the national parks are located in Terai zone, right. Now, to the southern side of this Terai, we have what? We have Bangar zone, right. In this Bangar zone, or this Bangar zone is called as the older alluvial deposit zone. And if you see those sediments are in which structure or in which shape? Conker shape. Now, to the southern side of this particular Bangar zone, we have the last zone, that is called as Khadar. Now, what is meant by Khadar? Khadar is a zone where we will be having the younger alluvial deposits or the new alluvial deposits. Now, when compared to all these zones, which is a very highly intensive agricultural zone, that is the last zone, that is Khadar zone, right. So, these are the divisions of these particular northern plains, right. So far we have seen the first physical feature, that is Himalayan mountains, and in today's class we have seen the second important feature, that is northern plains. Now in tomorrow's class or in next class, we will be seeing the third important physical feature, that is peninsular plateau. So, I hope you understood the concept in this particular topic, and try to remember that this is 9th class NCERT, right. We are seeing only those concepts which were given in this particular chapter. We are not going beyond this particular chapter. Now, once when you go to the higher classes, the same topic would be repeated there, and there you would be seeing the updated content. Are you getting my point? So, thank you so much for watching this video. In next class, we will be meeting with the new topic, that is Indian Peninsular Plateau.